Hello, everyone. My name is Travis. Today, we're going to be presenting and talking about problematic language in level one autism. I'm excited to be here today with you all, and I want to tell you guys a little bit about myself before we get started. So, I am 37 years old, and I was diagnosed with Asperger's at the age of 22. And I just have really been trying to make the most of my life, and I've had some challenging behaviors and some challenges, and recently just figured out how to overcome some of those challenges and live my best life. So I'm here to share my story and talk about problematic language and level one autism because I have struggled with problematic language. Um, Many people think that just because you're autistic or you're level one autism or Asperger's syndrome, you don't have problematic language. But that's just simply not the case. So we're going to talk about this today, and I hope you guys enjoy this presentation. We're going to dig right into it. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that there are no conflicts of interest and that I am aware of. So basically, I am my own presenter. I'm self-employed. I am not presenting any research other than the research that I've done on my own for my own brain. So it tells me this is how I live with autism, and this is how my brain interprets autism spectrum disorder and things like that. So no conflicts of interest, and we'd like to thank this place for hosting me. So let's dive right into language here. Often thought of as being verbal or nonverbal. So people with autism are often thought of as being verbal or nonverbal. Language is so much more than that, though. It's how we say something, when we say it, who we say it to. That's very important. Context is king. So the context is how, when, where, who we say it to. And the social steps must chain together in order to form a good social connection or a social relationship. Generalizing and applying. It's important we can generalize and apply what we're trying to say in appropriate social context. This is using the right skill at the right time and place with the right person. That's very important. We need to be able to read social situations. And just because we have words doesn't mean that we can just automatically use them without context. So that's very important to be able to learn how to use those words in the right context and generalize and apply them. Social steps one, step 787. Peter Gerhardt gives an example of there being 787 steps in the chain of building a romantic relationship. It is important not to skip steps. So that should be two there. Important not to skip steps. That means you can't go from step one to step 787, which is common for someone on the spectrum to maybe do and try on their own or accidentally do by not understanding that there are 787, 786 steps in between there. Now, let's just throw this out there. So there's not 787 steps, okay, guys? That's just a number that Peter uses when he presents, and I credit Peter a lot in my presentations because he's one of the top leading people in the field of behavior analysis, I think, and autism, and I will credit him quite a bit in my presentations. So give credit to Peter there, but there's not 787 steps. It's just a number that he throws out and uses. Step two is not 780, step 787. You cannot replace step two with step 787. That means you cannot go up to a woman in dating and relationships and say, "Hi, I'm Travis," is step one. And then your step two can't be, "Can I touch you?" So step 787 in Peter's example is, "Can I touch you?" And so you can't use step 787 at step two. That creates a situation in which you have problematic language because you're using inappropriate language out of context and it's going to come off the wrong way. So doing so would be socializing or using language out of context, like I said. So emotions lead to contextual errors. Autistic people can be black and white. This means we start at step one and skip to step 787. I do this sometimes because I don't understand other people's emotions properly. I am black and white with social skills and emotions, and oftentimes my emotions match my social skills, or like vice versa. I will think someone is not sad at all, or I think they are very sad. Here's an example. I had a friend whose father passed away, and I responded way out of context with what she was feeling and needing my social response to be. The storyline is that my friend's father passed away in 2014, right? And I thought she was going to be super sad and super depressed and upset. And so I started wanting to do things to make her feel better because I felt sad for her and depressed and upset for her. So I wanted to do things like send her flowers every day for 2 weeks, or have meals delivered to her house from a restaurant every day for 2 weeks. And my social behavior and response was completely over the top and out of context with what she was expecting. And my social behavior and my social response was out of context with what she was expecting, simply because I was misinterpreting her emotions and picking up on them too intently. So when I pick up on other people's emotions, I either don't pick up on them at all, or I pick up on them very intently, which causes a lot of contextual errors in social behavior. Because my emotions were out of context with her emotions, my social behavior or social response is out of context with what she expected or needed. It's important to match social behavior responses with emotional responses. So that means your emotions should match your social skills, your social behavior, and your vice versa, your social behavior should match your emotional response. Therefore, it is important to match my emotions with my peers' emotions or family members' emotions. Basically, anyone I'm interacting with, I need to match my emotions with theirs. This requires perspective taking, which is very important here. It's important to put yourself in someone else's shoes. I have to overcome mind blindness a lot because I have a hard time putting myself in someone else's perspective. So I can't understand what other people are going through because I have that mind blindness, that theory of mind issue, right? So I can't understand what other people are going through. And this creates a lot of issues for me because it creates a lot of improper social responses and social behaviors, because my emotional response is not what they're expecting it to be. Manding. We typically think of something in level 3. We typically think of Manding as something in level 3 or maybe level 2 autism. But even neurotypical folks man for things, guys. So we're always manding and asking for things. It's important that we don't just label this as a level 3 autism concern, because there is a level 1 autism concern as well. Manding in the right social context is very important. I spent years manding for the wrong things, sexually or romantically, because I was manding out of context with what I wanted or needed. I really wanted to get a girlfriend, but I was manding to touch someone. So because I learned from that Peter Gerhardt presentation that step 1, step 787 was, "Hi, I'm Travis. Can I touch you?" I started manding for the touch because I was going with the example that I learned, even though I want to alliterate that Peter used that as an example of what not to do. However, without having replacement behaviors, for some reason, I gravitated to that and grabbed onto that experience of what he was explaining and started to use that and inappropriately, because it was not the right behavior to access, and I struggled with finding replacement behaviors. So I was manning to touch someone instead of manning to get a girlfriend. Each step to me is a man. So whether you're at step 1, step 787, or step 500, you're manning for something from someone else. So I was manning for step 787, but I was doing it at step 2. So my replacement behavior, I was manning step 787, "Can I touch you?" at step 2, when I should be asking someone like, "What are you up to?" or "How's your day going?" and things like that, which is very inappropriate and out of context. I was manning to touch someone. Manning to touch someone was inappropriate because I had no emotional connection with them. I desired emotional connection, but because of black and white thinking, I was manding for step 787 instead of step 2. Touch versus emotional connection. I was manning for touch before emotional connection. Okay, so let me rephrase that. Manning for touch before emotional connection can ruin the chance of forming an emotional connection with someone. So obviously you understand this, but asking a woman for permission to touch her before she's ready, before you're emotionally connected to her, will ruin any friendship or any chance of a social relationship developing with that woman. Manning for emotional connection first can lead to touch. So if you do things in the right order and you follow the right steps, if you man to connect to someone, chances are it's going to be easier to ask them for permission to consent to be with them or to touch them later on down the road. So it's important to understand we have to teach task analysis, do all steps in the right order, like Peter Gerhardt says. That's very important. Context, context, context. As you can see, Manding is so much more than just forming words. Manding involves generalizing and applying your words in the right social context. Start simple. It is important to start simple. Start with a really easy skill. So like, for example, you might be teaching someone the man to open the door. So once they get that down and they're doing very well with that, then we can teach them maybe to man for a spoon. We're switching the object a little bit. The problem is they're going to have trouble transferring that sometimes from door to spoon. And that's problematic language when they can't transfer that object from door to spoon. But once they get that down, then we can sometimes we generalize to entirely different topics. Like I was just talking about manning from door to spoon. Um, but once we build that skill set, then we generalize within the same topic. So this is where it gets very complicated. After we can generalize from one topic to another, then we generalize within the same topic. So we generalize from step 787 to step 2. So now we're talking about generalizing within the social chain of steps and building relationships, right? So, we talk about generalizing from step 787 to step 2, or step 2 to step 787, or we can generalize from step 1 to step 10, or step 5 to step 500. We're generalizing back and forth between the social steps. And that's very important to be able to teach that skill. It's a very complex set of skills. It's going to be very super challenging to teach someone with autism, but I believe that it can be done if we start simple and build upon the simpleness of what we're teaching to help them with more complex issues. Start with large gaps in context. So for me, when I learn, it's important that I start generalizing from step 2 to step 787. I need to understand that generalization before I work my way to like more smaller generalizations. For example, from step 300 to step 400. And I just do that because I need to understand the wide gap before I understand the small gap, if that makes any sense. Stop masking. When I applied for adult services, I was told I need to be lower functioning to get help. This meant masking my autism by pretending to be lower functioning than what I was. This is a bad thing, not only for the client, but it's bad for everyone involved. It's a waste of time for the teacher or the behavior analyst or whoever is working with the client, but it's also a waste of taxpayer money. One of the first things, I was 26 years old and I have Asperger's syndrome. I was 26 years old and my DSP wanted to take me to McDonald's and he's like, watch me order my food. I want you to learn how to order your food at the counter at McDonald's. And that was just like completely masking my autism and becoming lower functioning than what I was in order to qualify to work with my DSP. And that's just a waste of everyone's time and money. So masking my autism meant pretending not to know how to man for certain items or not knowing how to do certain life skills. This actually created some mental illness issues, PTSD, anxiety, depression, you name it. Language. As you can see, language becomes problematic, not only when you don't have it, but also when you don't know how to generalize and apply what you have. It's also a level 1 autism issue. Yes, we know that. We learned today, it's more than just level 3 or level 2 autism. I have a book out called Problematic Language and Level 1 Autism. That'll be very useful for you in learning more about language and language development and how to use and apply language, generalize and apply language in the right social context. And you can check it out on Amazon at this link here. Here's my contact information. We're going to wrap up today's presentation. This is just meant to be a short introduction into language, problematic language. You can email me at travis.breeding@icloud.com. As you can see here, my phone number is 260-388-2910. There's my Facebook link, and you can find me on TikTok at travisbreeding757. So my mission and my goals in life. I would love to help people understand autism by traveling the country and speaking. I want to disseminate the science of applied behavior analysis. That's my goals. And I'm hoping to be able to do that. And you could help if you'd like to, if you're able to. If you're able to help, please consider donating some money to help me spread word about autism and ABA. This will help me with traveling costs and just traveling to conferences and things like that. Anything from $1 to $100 or whatever you can give in the middle is helpful. And this money will be used to teach about autism and ABA therapy. So this will be used to help me teach people what it's like to live with autism and also disseminate the science of applied behavior analysis to people and help parents understand why and how or when they should use ABA with their child or get their child into ABA services to help them be successful in life. So yeah. There's my Venmo if you guys want to donate some money, and I appreciate that very much. And that is the end of today's presentation. So I'd like to personally thank everyone for coming. And I appreciate your time and your willingness to learn about autism spectrum disorders. And if you have any questions, please email me or reach out by phone, text, or phone call, and I'll be glad to chat with you, or reach out on social media as well. I'll be glad to chat with you. So thanks for coming, and hope you guys enjoy your afternoon.